Welcome to today's episode. Michael and I will tackle provider directories. Now, provider directories do come in many different flavors and are used for different purposes. There are directories for consumers to see which providers are in the network of their health plan. It's used for provider credentialing, for claims processing, and for government. It also can be used for clinical and quality reporting. Now, keep in mind, of course, there are also public websites where we as consumers can go and look at doctors and their ratings and their reviews. This is another type of directory, if you will. So, Michael, just in understanding that these are very important use cases that are attached to provider directories, as I just mentioned, can you talk about why we're talking about provider directories and why it's important to interoperability?
Yes. So you may remember last time we did talk about the fact that most interactions or data transfers in interoperability are around a patient, and that typically means it's about an encounter that was recorded, most likely in an EMR. So just by that fact, the idea is that most records originate and or end up in an EMR, which is attached to one or more providers, which means that EMRs are natural endpoints, i.e. providers are natural endpoints where interoperability originates or where there's a destination. So to give an example, let's say we're a health plan and we need HEDIS records. In the traditional sense, you would find the provider that may have the clinical records for the member you're doing a measure for. You would reach out, find out where to get the record, how to get the record, and bring it in and abstract it. In interoperability, the whole point of finding the right provider, but in this case, an electronic resource, an API to call, is very similar. Now, that discovery should and will happen electronically, but the idea is the same. You need to essentially identify the provider and the resource that is attached to the provider. So it's very similar to, say, you pull up your browser and you type in a URL. The URL basically is an address you go to or the browser goes to pull the information. Same concept.
Okay, got it. So now we are hearing a lot of different acronyms and organization names that are involved in these provider directories, which include government agencies like CMS, private associations like Direct Trust, and I'll also mention our friends at CAQH and ProView. How do we make sense of all of this, and will these continue to coexist, or does it eventually converge?
Well, it would certainly be great if they were converging, but that's not going to happen in the near future. The reality is that different directories have different strengths and weaknesses and therefore better suited for certain use cases. Now, one important development that is happening at the federal level is the initiative called the Validated Healthcare Directory. And it's conducted under the HL7 standards umbrella. It's sponsored by the ONC and the Health Data Architecture Initiative within that, which is the architecture that the government really uses as a master plan. And it is really prescribing in a authoritative fashion what that directory that everybody should be able to go to should look like. Important point here is that they deliberately replaced the term provider with healthcare to really encompass all the people or all the entities involved in delivering care beyond what we typically think of as providers. So the terminology change is small but significant.
Okay, so another important FHIR initiative that many of us probably didn't know much about. It seems like FHIR is now the go-to standard for the future of interoperability, and we keep hearing that with FHIR development, testing, and rollout, with that moving significantly faster and becoming less costly than what we've been accustomed to with past standards. Does this mean that the VHDIR rollout will be rolled out in the next couple of years?
Well, it's certainly true that FHIR initiatives are much faster and much less resource intensive than any technologies prior. So that part is true. However, in this case with this directory, the most challenging part will be to populate a complete and accurate directory and maintain that. That will take a significant amount of time. Now, we went to the ONC Interoperability Conference in Washington, D.C. last week, where the experts seemed to give us a range somewhere between 3 years to 10 years on the outer edge in terms of how long it will take to really for VDIR to become what it was envisioned to be.
All right, so that's a very high level inventory of the provider directories. At least that's what we have called them up until now. And as always, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.